Hi and welcome to my first video on this Mordheim table you can see here. I've been planning this for quite some time and I've been printing a lot of buildings and a lot of roads and a lot of walls. Now finally I'm going to start gluing all this together and making the board and painting it. So the first step here will be assembling all the pieces you can see here. I've planned this out for a few months actually, and this is what I finally came up with. In the middle here we have a river area. There's going to be a lot of stuff here. We have walkways and small island with buildings, and there's going to be a tower here in the middle, and from all these places there will be planks and walkways all over the place, so you can access the entire board from everywhere. This will have the city walls that you've been seen printed and painted. This will have a raised area where we'll have a kind of a little mansion, and here we'll have rubble falling out here, and so you can access this from here. And we'll actually have some stairs here, and we have to cut this a little bit, so it'll be an access point there. And there will be a shipwreck here at the docks, so you can like access this area and walk across here. And here will be the big fortress with the town hall inside. Also with the ruined area here will be rubble falling down. And the ruined bridge will have lots of planks and walkways across, so you can get across there. And this will have a small like sewage stream out here underneath that bridge, and here we'll have some buildings, and there will be stairs up here also, so you can access that. And I will start by cutting into the walls, so you can access the stairways, like here. We have to cut in there, and we have to cut in there, and yeah, in a lot of places. So I'm going to start by doing that, and then I will go on to gluing all this onto the table. The buildings will be separate, but all the roads and raised areas will be they will be stuck onto the board. So yeah, that's what's going to happen now. I'm using the Proxon hot wire cutter, usually used for polystyrene cutting, to cut these walls that I got from Infinite Dimensions. They're really nice walls from the Whitewood Abbey set, and I'm going to use them for both the elevated areas, and I'm using them for the river walls. And just cutting it out with the hot wire cutter and just trimming the stuff you don't get out with a plier. For gluing it down to the board, I'm using super glue. I got kind of a big batch of super glue from a car shop. It's €5 for a big bottle, and you get a spray of super glue hardener also. It's really cheap, and be careful here to set it down where you want it, because the super glue dries really fast on the MDF board. And just plan it out before you stick it on, but it's not that hard once you get the hang of it. And just be sure to cut the pieces to size and where you want them before gluing them, because otherwise you're gonna have kind of a problem. And I can't stress enough how important the planning part is here, because if stuff is just millimeters wrong here, it will create big gaps and you'll have problems filling it. So be careful, and just plan and stretch and cut, and then when you're done you glue. The bridges, as you can see, fit really snugly between the walls here, not to create big gaps, as I don't want to use too much filler. The polystyrene bases for the lands parts here are made of polystyrene, and they're glued with just PVA glue, and kind of filling the gaps here with some glue before doing the real fill work. And yeah, just be a little bit patient here. For the stonework on the ground, I'm using an Italian wallpaper that I got from a store in United Kingdom. It has a very nice stone texture. Impossible to understand how anyone would want that on the walls, but for modeling purposes it's just perfect. And I'm using the elevated polystyrene parts as a guide, and I just draw with a felt marker and then carefully cut out the parts here. If it's not perfect, doesn't matter, you're gonna fill all the corners, all the cracks and stuff like that with sand and filler later on to create kind of rubble. So yeah, be as careful as you can, but any mistakes you make can be filled with debris because it's a ruined city. That's the way it's supposed to look. When cutting these odd shapes, you just push the wallpaper to the edges and just cut along it. Again, I'm using PVA glue liberally here to stick the wallpaper down. I kind of forgot about the little stream, so I quickly got the hot wire cutter out, and as you can see, you can shape the wire any way you like. So I just made it into a kind of a U shape that's suitable for the river here, and I just cut it out and remove the excess. And then use the glue here liberally again, and first glue on the elevated part, and then kind of like a puzzle you carefully try to fit the stonework here as nice as you can, and try to avoid any air bubbles underneath. There will be, but there are ways to remove those. I'm using a paper tissue. You can use a brush or a sponge or something like that, but I used what I got. And try to make the seams as invisible as you can. The patterns are probably not going to match up perfectly, but try to at least not have gaps there. Important when you're cutting it, so you cut really straight lines. And along the river here or the stream, I just feel with my fingers where the cut is going to be, and I just cut it out and then fix any mistakes later on with a knife. There's also going to be sand and stuff there, so don't have to be too careful. When gluing this part on the elevated area, it's really easy because that's cut to size and it fits nicely. So just put them in and let them dry. It takes seconds before I start filling up the gaps. The stairs here are from RM Printable Terrain. It's from their Kickstarter Stormguard. It's really nice. The bridges and the stairs are from there. I use wall spackle here, just liberally put on with a spackle and a popsicle stick to fill out the gaps. The roads are from Mini Stages. It's a really nice road set that I upscaled to 130% on the width and the length, and I scaled it down to 85% on the height because I didn't want to have so long print times. And I cut them with the hot wire cutter to size if they didn't fit. There are many pieces that you can lay out, but I had some places where I wanted to just cut them a little bit, and I did that. And then carefully glued them with super glue again. Making sure that I measured correctly, because the middle part, the river part, is going to be removable, so the roads have to meet up on the other parts so it doesn't look weird. And yeah, just take your time and glue them on. The stair piece here on the other elevated part, I glued that on before I actually glued on the walls, because I wanted it to fit snugly and not have to push it in. So just placing everything where I want it. Again, I'm using the PVA glue here and sticking down the inside of the elevated part where the mansion is going to be placed later on. Going to be some gravestones and stuff there also. Here you can see the modularity. The roads match up for a 4x4 table, and then you can easily insert the river part here for a 6x4 table. That's mostly used for bigger games, but I really like the river area, and it's going to be exciting to do the water effects later on. I'm using modeling compound for where the walls have caved in and rubble is poured out into the streets, and that's made out of just toilet paper and plaster. You just mix up toilet paper, you kind of use it with a blender and dry it, and I stick in some parts where I got left over from the walls and some bricks I made from expanded PVC, and just gravel. This gravel I bought at IKEA. It's used for plants, and it's really nice size, and just pour it on until it looks good. You just have to use your gut here, and yeah, it looks nice. You have to kind of imagine how it looks painted, but this kind of self-explanatory how it's going to look later on, but I think it works fine, and it really looks like the walls have just broken, and the insides here from the elevated parts has just poured out onto the streets, and bits of the walls are just left lying there. To stick that down, I'm using diluted PVA glue. It's just water and PVA mixed up to a kind of milky consistency, and I'm just adding it with a brush here, and do that a lot of times. You pour it on, let it dry, and then put on another layer, another coat. Just do that until it really sticks hard, because you're going to be gaming on this board, and you have to have a sturdy surface. So that probably takes almost a day before it's finished, because I put on maybe 5 layers of that. And I use the same mixture here to seal the walls, because I'm going to be pouring resin here for the water effects, and if I'm not sealing all the gaps, it's going to pour out from underneath there and down onto the floor, and that's not what I want. So carefully sealing this with a PVA mixture. The roads had gaps in them, and I really wanted to hide those, so I used a wall filler, or it's a rapid filler here, and I'm putting it on top of where 2 rocks meet up in the gap, and I'm kind of smearing that out to make the gaps disappear. And then I'm using a mixture here of PVA, water, and some paint texture. It's really nice kind of sand texture that's probably made out of plastic granule or something. It really takes paint and glue very good. It soaks up, and it's very hard when it's dried, and I use that to create kind of gravel parts here where dirt and stuff has gathered in the corners along the road edges or on top of the roads where I want to hide the gaps. And this is awesome stuff. It just it creates a rock hard surface, and it doesn't go away when the minis are moved up on it. But yeah, it looks nice painted, and it works as a filler also, because the wall filler has kind of a boring, very plain texture, and this is more what it should look like in the corners where dust and dirt and stuff would collect. The outside of the walls, I wanted to have kind of a sloping part here where the grass area and the rocks are going to be. So I used the hot wire cutter again, and I just made kind of a hillside, or what do you call it, just to have it slope down. I'm gonna probably continue this board into another 6x4 board that's gonna be outside. It's gonna be landscape, and I want that board not so thick, so I'm bring this down to the elevation of that board, which is going to be a more of a 10 millimeter polystyrene sheet on top of the MDF. I'm using wall spackle again here for the ground texture. It's going to be covered with flock and stuff like that, so it doesn't really matter how it looks, but it has to be not super flat. So I'm pushing the rocks that I made out of plaster from Woodland Scenic molds, pushing them into the wall spackle here. They stick really nice when you do that, so don't worry about gluing them down, it sticks. And just kind of plan them out so it looks natural. I'm not the best at that, but I'm doing the best I can, and just applying some random rocks and gravel here to create some kind of a natural outdoorsy feeling here. It's always good to check references when doing this. I'm usually watching Luke's APS, and Luke Town is really good, and Real Terrain Hobbies are awesome terrain creators, and they have really nice videos and tutorials. The Terrain Tutor is really good, and Terranscapes used to be a very nice channel. I think it's still up, but he stopped making videos, and he was one of the best terrain makers on YouTube before he quit. And that's where I learn all I know. I experiment a little bit, but most are techniques used by other people, and what I do mostly is just to use what I have at home. If I have some wall spackle, I use that instead of whatever they're using. But YouTube is a really nice place for finding these gems of channels and videos on how to do that. That's where I found my inspiration. There are some really good people on Facebook also, or Instagram. I can recommend Colty, making awesome mordheim boards, and Ken's Creative Madness on Facebook is just insane. That's where I get a lot of my inspiration for these boards. And here you can see the board after texturing and gluing down everything, putting on gravel and stuff like that, and it's not dried yet, but this is what it's looking like just constructed. I forgot some parts. I just felt that I was missing some details, so after taking these pictures I decided to just glue on a few bits and bobs on the walls and the stairs, just drain pipes and ornaments that I found. These are not 3D printed, it's just Games Workshop bits that I found and I got from different kits for 40k and fantasy. I did 3D print a sewer cover here that I just cut out a hole for with a knife and a hot wire cutter, and I filled it with a little bit of spackle and just super glued the drain cover here on top of that. In the next video I'm gonna start painting this beast of a board. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one.